When you think of the Eagles, you probably picture smooth harmonies, California sunsets, and that laid-back, peaceful, easy feeling. What you don't picture: drug-fueled chaos, backstage brawls, and stories wild enough to compete with bands like Led Zeppelin or Guns N' Roses. But here's the twist. Behind the polished image of one of the best-selling bands in history was a world of excess that could get downright insane. And trust me, once you hear the stories, you'll never listen to Hotel California the same way again. Because from the moment they formed in 1971 to their explosive breakup in 1980, the Eagles weren't just racking up chart-topping hits. They were racking up fights, scandals, and drug busts. And the craziest part? Some of these stories ended in ways no fan could have seen coming. So let's dive into the hidden side of the Eagles. The groupie tales that got out of hand, the backstage battles that nearly turned violent on stage, and the one night that officially blew the band apart. So how did the Eagles even get their name? Well, the real story is way stranger than you'd think. According to drummer and vocalist Don Henley, the band, along with the photographer and legendary art director Gary Burton, headed out to Joshua Tree National Park in 1971. Their mission? A photo shoot. Their fuel? Peyote. And that's when it happened. While the group was tripping, a lone eagle soared high above them. The band looked up, and in their haze, they took it as a sign. But here's where it gets hilarious. Glenn Frey, guitarist and Henley's partner in crime, wandered off from the group to, take care of business, pants down in the desert, higher than he'd ever been. Suddenly, his bandmates start yelling, "Eagle! Eagle!" Frey looks up, sees this giant bird gliding in the sky, and immediately trips over his pants, tumbling down a pile of rocks. And in his mind, this is the kicker. The bird looked right at him, smirked, and said, "Eagles, huh?" And just like that, the name stuck. As the Eagles' popularity skyrocketed, so did their partying. Now these guys might have looked like mild-mannered, mustachioed, soft rockers, but in reality, they were throwing parties so wild they actually had to create a system to keep them under control. They called it the Third Encore. Here's how it worked. Every night after a show, the band would take over a massive hotel suite and throw an invite-only after-party. And we're not talking a couple of beers and guitars around the fire. This was rockstar mayhem. One 1979 Rolling Stone article described a night where the room was packed with the Eagles' entourage, several pro hockey players, Eddie Money, the Little River Band, and a ton of locals who somehow made the cut. But the invite process, that's where it gets interesting. The band and their crew were each given a stack of buttons. If you wanted someone at the after party, whether it was a fan, a groupie, or just someone who caught your eye, you handed them a button. No button, no party, and the only rule, no weirdos. Which is hilarious because sure, they were doing mountains of coke and hosting nightly hotel blowouts. But hey, even chaos has standards. Black Sabbath. Here's a crossover you probably never expected. The Eagles and Black Sabbath sharing studio space. Yep. While the Eagles were recording their legendary Hotel California, Ozzy Osbourne and the boys were working in the same building. And here's the twist. Ozzy might have been biting the heads off bats on a stage, but when it came to pure studio madness, the California country rockers had Black Sabbath beat. Sabbath bassist Geezer Butler recalled that whenever his band came in after Don and Glenn, they had to literally scrape cocaine out of the mixing board just to start recording. How much coke are we talking? Butler estimated they'd left about a pound of the stuff in the console, so yeah, forget the Dark Lords of Metal. In the studio, it was the Eagles who were living like absolute monsters. The Bahamas. In 1974, the Eagles decided to take a quick break from the road. 2 days in the Bahamas, gambling, relaxing, living the rock star dream. But like typical rock stars, they didn't exactly pack light. Along with their luggage came a stash of allium and weed. And that's when things went south. As soon as the band got off the plane, Bahamian Customs flagged them. One by one, they were pulled into private rooms to be searched. Glenn Frey later admitted that in that moment, they were sure they were about to end up in a Bahamian jail cell, rock's softest sounding band locked up abroad. But then, enter Irving Azoff. Their legendary manager somehow smoothed it all over and got the band out of trouble. No arrest, no charges. Just another insane chapter in the Eagles' story. And this wouldn't be the last time Azoff had to swoop in and save his band from complete disaster. Walking away. By 1975, the Eagles were shifting gears. They were moving away from their country rock roots and leaning hard into straight-up rock and roll. Most fans loved it, but one guy who definitely didn't, Bernie Leadon. Leadon had come in as a country guitarist and banjo picker, and the new heavier sound wasn't exactly his style. Add in endless touring, burnout, and tension with the rest of the band, and Bernie was on his last legs. Then came the breaking point. After a show at the Orange Bowl, Glenn Frey was buzzing with excitement, talking about his big plans for the band. That's when Bernie snapped. He walked up to Frey, calmly said, "You need to chill out, man," and then dumped an entire beer on Frey's head. And just like that, he walked out. No dramatic fight, no long speech, just beer and goodbye. The craziest part? He didn't apologize for it for another 40 years. Chainsaw. Joe Walsh wasn't just known for his guitar playing, he was also famous for absolutely wrecking every place he stayed. Hotels, dressing rooms, you name it. If Walsh checked in, something was going to get destroyed. So his manager, Irving Azoff, decided to get creative. Instead of trying to stop him, Azoff gave Walsh a very special gift, a chainsaw. The instructions were simple. "Joe, keep this at home." But of course, Walsh had other plans. In an interview, he explained what happened next. One night, he and Azoff checked into a Holiday Inn. They were supposed to have connecting rooms, but didn't. So what did Walsh do? He fired up the chainsaw, cut through the wall, walked straight into Azoff's room and said, "Hey, we have connecting rooms now." Joe Walsh's antics didn't stop with chainsaws. Off stage, he was often running wild with none other than comedian John Belushi. And according to Walsh himself, hanging out with Belushi could be terrifying. One night in Chicago, the two tried to get into the ultra-fancy restaurant at the Astor Towers Hotel. But there was a problem. They were both wearing jeans, and the staff wasn't having it. Belushi, of course, had a plan. The duo ran into an alley, grabbed some spray paint, and covered their jeans in black. Boom! Instant tuxedo pants. When they walked back in, they were seated right away. But here's the punchline. By the time they stood up to leave, the paint had rubbed off all over the chairs, and their pants, as Walsh later laughed, looked like jeans again. And the wildest part? That was just the start of their night. That same night in Chicago, things escalated. After the spray paint stunt, Joe Walsh and Jim Belushi moved on to the Gold Coast Hotel, Walsh's own room, and, well, let's just say, chaos ensued. Glenn Frey later recalled that the pair went about their destruction with great glee. The aftermath? A $28,000 damage bill. And yes, if that price includes the minibar. Band fight. By 1977, Randy Meisner had reached his breaking point. Years of nonstop touring, constant partying, and the iron fist rule of Glenn Frey and Don Henley had finally taken a toll. But there was another problem, too. Take it to the limit. Meisner's soaring high note in the song's climax had become a nightmare. Every night, hitting it perfectly was a source of stress, anxiety, and mounting frustration. After a show that year, the audience called for an encore. The song of choice, you guessed it, Take It to the Limit, Meisner snapped. He refused to sing, and that's when Glenn Frey lost it. "Well, fuck you then," he shouted. What followed was a physical confrontation so intense police had to rush in to separate the two, but Henley, he stepped in, pushing the officers aside, yelling, "This is private. Real f***ing private." And just like that, Meisner walked away from the band. One more wild moment in a string of Eagles chaos that the smooth, laid-back songs never hinted at. Tons of coke. Even after leaving a pound of coke for Black Sabbath to clean up, the Eagles were still swimming in the white stuff. During the Hotel California follow-up, Henley called cocaine just a writing tool, fuel for their sessions that, in the end, brought out the worst in everyone. By then, after nearly a decade of non-stop touring and recording, cocaine had become the only thing keeping the machine running. Fast Lane, while the riff for Life in the Fast Lane came straight from Joe Walsh's warm-up. The story behind the lyrics was anything but ordinary. Henley recalled it in The History of the Eagles. "I'm riding shotgun in a Corvette with a drug dealer heading to a poker game. Next thing I know, we're flying down the road at 90. Holding on for dear life. I yell, 'Hey, man.' He just grins and goes, 'Life in the Fast Lane.' Boom, song title right there. Overdose." By 1979, the Eagles' reckless lifestyle was starting to catch up with them. As the Telegraph reported, the craziness included the arrest of drummer, songwriter, and vocalist Henley in November 1979 after a naked 16-year-old prostitute suffered a drug overdose during a party at his L.A. home. Police confiscated large amounts of weed, cocaine, and quaaludes while on the scene. Henley called 911 himself, but he was ultimately charged with contributing to the delinquency of a minor. He later claimed he took the fall for roadies who had supplied the drugs. In the end, the rock star faced a relatively light sentence, a fine and 2 years probation.